I have got a real treat for you today. Welcome to Grant Grove, now part of Kings Canyon National Park. This 154-acre paradise was originally set aside as General Grant National Park in 1890 and is one of the oldest protected areas in the United States. The park was named for this titan, which itself was named in honor of the Union General turned U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant, and according to the National Park Service, is either the second or third largest surviving tree on Earth. A distinction gained in 2003 after fire decimated the colossal Washington tree in nearby Sequoia National Park. General Grant is actually bigger than General Sherman, considered the largest surviving tree on Earth by every metric until about 100 feet off the ground, where the scales tip in Sherman's direction. At 100 feet plus, General Sherman maintains a lead in both mass and height, soaring to a dizzying 275 feet, just 6 feet taller than General Grant. But General Grant has a few tricks of its own. Of these two fabled giants, Grant is far younger, and having taken root in an extremely fertile location, has grown to incredible size in an estimated 1,600 years. Even for sequoias, among the oldest and fastest growing trees on the planet, that's extremely fast. And owing in part to the fact that General Grant was once widely considered to be the largest tree in the world, and thanks to its subsequent place in the hearts of Americans, General Grant has been awarded a myriad of unique distinctions beyond its listing as one of the largest surviving trees on Earth. Giant sequoias are so uniquely inspiring that for many people, they have become the living embodiment of strength, fortitude, and nearly eternal endurance. Seeking to enshrine that admiration while simultaneously honoring the men and women of the American Armed Forces, General Grant was designated as a national shrine in 1956 by then President Dwight D. Eisenhower. During the dedication ceremony, Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz declared, "General Grant's stature equal to that other great shrine in Arlington Cemetery, the tomb of the unknown soldier." But even before General Grant became a national shrine and a revered memorial to America's servicemen and women, a little girl visiting the park in 1924 marveled at this magnificent tree and exclaimed, "What a wonderful Christmas tree General Grant would be." From that moment, the notion stuck. And in 1926, President Calvin Coolidge designated General Grant as America's national Christmas tree. And yes, the uncontested largest Christmas tree on Earth. But don't expect to see General Grant decorated with lights and ornaments. Beyond the obvious logistical problems, there is simply no need to add tinsel and frills to this natural wonder. This living skyscraper is beyond magnificent, as is. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, there's something so wonderful about the story of how General Grant became known as America's national Christmas tree. After all, for a child, what is more magical than Christmas? Standing among these giant trees, it's so easy to feel like a small child again. Overcome with a mostly forgotten sense of wonder and awe at a living thing so colossal, so ancient, and so inspiring. I can't imagine a more perfect Christmas tree. Visiting Grant Grove or the sequoias in general is an opportunity to feel like a kid again, to look at the wonders of the natural world with new eyes and marvel at how remarkable and awe-inspiring nature can be. Even though Grant Grove is far smaller than other sequoia groves, most notably the giant forest, this forest paradise is a treasure trove of unique and humbling experiences, and it's extremely accessible, allowing pretty much anyone the opportunity to marvel at these priceless trees. Even if you're restricted to a wheelchair, anyone can bask in the presence of this resplendent grove of giants and appreciate how tiny and fortunate we all are to call this remarkable world our home. Now, a couple of critical tips before visiting. Far too many people visit Grant Grove for the sole purpose of snagging a few selfies and adding a hash mark to their travel checklist. But there is so much more to be experienced. Now look, I am a bucket list skeptic under the best of circumstances, and outright critical of travel checklists in general. Because a checklist mentality leads to the exact opposite of its intended outcome. The great lie of bucket lists and checklists is that they allow you to maximize your time and your experience. And that's why people scour the internet looking for quote unquote must do's and bucket list suggestions. It's also the reason the internet rewards content creators for inventing and republishing nonsensical and often outright deceptive lists of alleged must do's. It has taken me a lifetime of travel and adventure to realize that internet checklists are pretty much weapons grade nonsense, which harm people and our wild spaces alike by stifling personal discovery and hyper-focusing social media culture on vulnerable natural resources. Honestly, we each connect differently to our parks and wildlands, which means no two adventurers should simply copy and paste the same experience, and no responsible or informed traveler would ever suggest otherwise. I want to make sure that you get the most out of your travels and that our parks and wildlands thrive. And the only way I can think of doing that is to make the absolute best travel resources available. And that means sharing this secret with you. Nature reveals her best self to those who respect her and give her time and the opportunity to open their eyes and enrich their lives. That's the opportunity you have when visiting Grant Grove and our other precious stands of giant sequoias. There are a number of other giants in this grove, though none on quite the same scale as General Grant. Other worthy landmarks and experiences include walking through the aptly named fallen Monarch tree, which has been used as a shelter by both native tribes and early Euro-American settlers, as well as a stable for the U.S. cavalry and even a saloon. Nowadays, it offers Grove visitors a unique opportunity to walk through the heart of one of these colossal trees. But there are other landmarks and trees with critical stories to tell that are almost completely forgotten or ignored by most visitors to Grant Grove. This remarkable island of titanic trees is surrounded by a vast graveyard of felled giants. Ageless trees cut down and turned into grape stakes and roof shingles, or, in the case of a select few, cut down so portions could be shipped across the country in hopes of convincing a nation blinded by manifest destiny and material pursuits that there were colossal, ageless, and irreplaceable trees out west that were doomed to destruction if action was not taken to save those that remained. The centennial stump and log of the same name are easily overlooked by visitors to this grove, and quite literally reside in the shadow of General Grant. But they're also all that remain of a titan once 24 feet wide at the base and 300 feet tall. A 16-foot tall portion of the centennial tree was cut into sections, shipped to, reassembled, and put on display at the World's Fair in Philadelphia in 1876, where the gigantic trunk was quickly dubbed the California hoax by onlookers who could not believe that trees of such unimaginable size were real. The nearby General Noble tree, indistinguishable from General Grant in scale, and more than 3,200 years old when it was cut down in 1892 and shipped to the World's Fair in Chicago, where, in like fashion, it was rejected as a hoax by onlookers. Having outlived every great civilization since the fabled clash between Achilles and Hector before the walls of Troy, the remarkable tree named General Noble is now all but forgotten, and a colossal blackened stump and plaque are the only monuments to one of the most remarkable trees to ever have existed. To this day, General Noble remains the largest known tree ever cut down by mankind. Then came Mark Twain, a colossal tree named in honor of America's most famous author and selected in 1891 after the establishment of General Grant National Park as a sort of sacrificial lamb in hopes of finally and definitively proving to the world the existence of the unimaginably gigantic trees so long considered an absurd hoax by the public. After 2 weeks of cutting, one witness described the scene as the more than 300-foot tall titan fell before the saw and the axe. The immense tree quivered like one in agony, and with a crushing, raging, deafening sound, it fell, breaking into 1,000,000 pieces. Two cross sections were salvaged and cut before being shipped to the American Museum of Natural History in New York and the British Museum of Natural History in London. Today, the dead, often blackened stumps of these lost giants have a great deal to teach us about ourselves, and seem to me at least to be raising a troubling warning, as relevant as ever. Almost 150 years since skeptic onlookers in Philadelphia dismissed these remarkable trees as a hoax, what remains of these ageless giants is rapidly vanishing, despite all the protections put in place to preserve them, falling victim to the ravages of climate change. Yet another demonstrable reality, popularly dismissed as a hoax. Roughly 14% of all surviving sequoias, close to 11,000 trees, were killed in a single unprecedented and apocalyptic fire in 2020. Many of the trees that were lost were among the largest on Earth, and others were so severely damaged that they are expected to succumb soon. There are many people who wish I would just ignore the crisis that these trees face and focus on sharing the incredible forest scenery on display in these groves. And quite honestly, nothing would make me happier than to report that these trees and groves are safe and set to endure for countless generations. But I've walked the devastated regions of the giant forest and heard a number of these charred giants splinter, crumble, and cry out before crashing to the ground. It's simply not possible to love and appreciate these trees and also ignore the very thing that threatens to wipe them out within our lifetime. They've outlived all of the greatest civilizations in recorded history, except ours. Now, I hope that you have the opportunity to visit and marvel at these priceless trees in person and stare up in childlike wonder like the young girl who envisioned General Grant as a colossal Christmas tree. But more than that, I hope my children, and their children after them have the same opportunity that we have today. My life would have been much poorer without the time that I've spent wandering among California's giant sequoias. And I hope you feel similarly should you have the opportunity to visit them yourself. When visiting, take as many pictures as you like. But please, remain on official trails and behind fences and barriers that have been put up to protect these precious, vanishing trees. For lack of a better word, these groves are sacred and deserve to be treated as such. I look forward to continuing our journey together as we explore the surviving groves of giant sequoias. So make sure to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos, including my one-of-a-kind tour of the giant forest after the destruction caused by the castle fire. I'll show you what remains of this incredible forest and what we've lost forever. Until then, this is Mike for At Home in Wild Spaces, reminding you to find time for adventure.